And we want to say a special thank you to the 5 traditional knowledge bearers who showcased their craft. The CookUp is serving copious conversation on cultural heritage and the 5 ICH domains. I'm going to fill you in on that in a second. My name is Alicia Daniel Blake, and I am the Research and Communications Officer at the Department of Creative Economy, Cultural Heritage in the Ministry of Sports and Creative Economy. Now, I have with us today, and she's going to be in our cultural kitchen, and she is a creative at heart. She is an author and a poet, and her name is Heather Archibald, and she was shortlisted for the Commonwealth Foundation Prize 2024. And you, our friends, looking at us, I think you can be called our CookUp connoisseurs. No, you have to tell me what you think about that. And you can respond to us on our social media on Facebook. We are at SKNICH. On YouTube, we are at St. Kitts Culture. On Twitter, we are at St. Kitts Culture. So drop us a quick note. Let us know what you think about CookUp connoisseurs, and let us know what you think about the CookUp. Now, in our opening, there was a local steel pan composition. You need to also tell us who is this person, and at the end I'm going to give you the surprise, because it's going to be a surprise for many persons. Welcome, Miss Archibald, to the CookUp. So you are in our cultural kitchen, and we are going to be cooking up something for our CookUp connoisseurs today. Now, you were shortlisted for the Commonwealth Short Story. Now, we realize that you did not win, but it was still a great accomplishment. So, congratulations.
Thank you. And I must say that I love the name CookUp. The 2 things I like most in life is food and literature. And sometimes literature and then food, but you know. So CookUp is just it's so visceral and tasty and foodie.
Yes, delicious.
It's a great name.
So you actually came up with another option for our audience. It could be CookUp Foodies. So make a choice, either CookUp Foodies or CookUp Connoisseurs. Let us know. So your craft falls under one of our ICH domains, and that is oral traditions and expressions. Now, there are 5 others. There is performing arts, social practices and rituals, knowledge and practices pertaining to nature and the universe, and traditional craftsmanship. So now for your craft, Ms. Archibald, we are going to first look at a clip that you did when there was the shortlisting for the Commonwealth. And that clip tells us a bit about the marriage proposal.
My story, The Marriage Proposal, raises the issue of emigration, and the story focuses on the character, Adeline, who in her later years finds herself raising 2 girls left in her care as their parents went off to England to find work. In the Caribbean, many parents are forced to leave their homes to seek economic advantage abroad. Hence, many children were raised by willing or sometimes not so willing caretakers, such as family members or friends or even next door neighbors. So a lot of single older women find themselves raising these children for their loved ones.
All right, so Ms. Archibald, tell us, is the central theme in the marriage proposal immigration?
Yes, it's hard to tell. Yes, it's about immigration. That's what I said. Because in going over some of the stories that I've written, I noticed they all have to do with somebody leaving at some point, and I didn't even plan that. It's just the stories that resonate with me, and they're not stories that I pulled out of thin air. These are stories that I've lived with other people. There's the stories that other people have gifted to me, as if to say, go write this. And you know, I don't, usually they're not, it's not one person's story. Usually I fit them in because they're experiences and they don't have to come as they happen to any one person, because many people have these same experiences. Yes. So that's, I would say, yes, immigration. It also has to do with a strong woman at the center of this.
So
right?
Tell us about Adeline.
I love Adeline. So as I said, I was gifted the story of a woman who was kind of Adeline-like. That was my name for her. And she was what we would call an uneducated woman coming up from the fields and, you know, making her own path. And at somewhere in her 50s, she ends up with these children that somebody asked her to take care of while the family, the husband and wife went away to study. Oh, okay. Not to study, I'm sorry, I went away to study. They went away to get money, to make money in England so that they could come home and, you know, build some kind of fortune.
So tell us, how did this impact her? Because I would assume she did not naturally birth children. How did all in a sudden having children impact her?
The story of Adeline is not finished because she did have a child in her youth, which she wasn't able to raise because they're more prominent family members, you know, the father's family took the child. So there is that other story, and it comes up sort of as a thread in this story, just to give her a little, you know, fleshing out. But by the time she had these children, she hadn't raised any children, right? And these children just fell into her heart, and you know, then she's given this ultimatum, you know, you have to, it's me or these children. You know, I don't tell the end of the story, but I suspect that people know, if they know me, what the end of the story would be.
So you left the cliffhanger. Oh my, okay. What are some of the other themes, or are there other themes in the story?
Well, Adeline represents a number of women in our society. I grew up with my mother and father, but there were neighbors' children, people who were raising children for other people. Sometimes they weren't even blood. I remember a woman next door who was raising children just because this woman had to go away to find a life in St. Thomas or one of the Virgin Islands, and she was looking after these children. So there were people who did that. Sometimes I think that the motivation may have been, you know, for themselves to get an income, sort of. You know, I mean, nothing's wrong with that. I mean, you give your labor, you're supposed to get something. A lot of them got stuck and didn't, you know, people couldn't afford to support as much. Money didn't come as it had been promised. And they still raise these kids.
So do you have any, because I didn't read the story, is there any situation where you mentioned that sometimes persons didn't get paid, but what about barrels? Because that's also something that's very cultural for us.
From St. Thomas, from the Virgin Islands.
Yes.
But barrels didn't come from England in those days.
Okay.
60s. We got, you know, my mother's family had migrated to England, so we got little parcels, and parcels came. But these people struggled too, and sometimes they went and had other children there in the new home, and weren't, you know, able to support as sumptuously. And there are people who took people's children because, like a woman next door who couldn't cope with her children or had too many, and somebody, you know, the child comes over, next thing you know, they live with the family who was already big, you know, and not necessarily rich. So these women, I really think, there's a place in my heart for these women who take other people's children. I mean, when you birth a child, you're kind of stuck. Well, you might be stuck, but sometimes you feel that way, really.
So it speaks, it speaks to the traditional culture of St. Kitts and Nevis, where the village literally raises the child.
Yes, definitely.
Okay, that's lovely. So do some of these other themes appear in your other writings? Because you are also a poet.
Oh, yes. Gee, I'm sure they do. I'm sure they do. There's always, I write mostly about women, as you know, I write, I guess because I'm woman and because there's so few women voices, Oh yes, their voices, they hear them. But in terms of the literature, in terms of the poetry or the fiction that I write, I want to see these women. I want this woman next door to be prominent, and so I want to lift them because they're not going to write their stories.
I'm loving it. I'm loving it. So what was your reason for entering the Commonwealth competition?
Girl, I tell you, I made a promise to myself that I would respect the work that I write by submitting them to competitions. I really don't like competitions. I like it if I win, of course, but it's harrowing. First of all, you have to meet a deadline, which for me is really hard. So the Commonwealth, someone told me about it a couple of years ago, more than a couple, like 5 years ago, before COVID, everything. And I have been promising to submit, and I had a friend who had found out about it and told me, oh, this thing, and she wrote me a month before, 2 weeks before, and I said, I really should do it this time because God has put this person here to harass me. So,
no,
yeah.
Hold that thought. We need to take a short break.
Yes.
And CookUp connoisseurs or CookUp foodies will be right back.
It's time that we realize that we must work together to thrive. The world as we know it, the sky and below it. Could I never have more wonder? Yeah, with life and all you see and the climate's changing, but hope is remaining. And we can't ignore the future. It depends on you and me. One chance, all that we got. One voice, together we start. Take care, the world where we live. Permite a todos vivir. Tomamos la oportunidad para guardar la humanidad. And I must leave no one behind because we are one climate, one Caribbean. One climate, one Caribbean.
Welcome back to the CookUp, where Ms. Heather Archibald and I are serving up copious conversation. So before we continue though, there is a feature here that I would like to mention. This table was done at the Craft House, as well as this beautiful blue vase, which are lovely and they are well decorated with your book, Home. Right? So let's look at where we can continue now. 2 days ago, you had a reading at the Charles A. Halbert Library of The Marriage Proposal. Now, why did you do that reading?
So this is the piece that I submitted to the Commonwealth Prize, and I was so amazed that I was selected to be on the short list, which in the Caribbean was 5 of us, and worldwide there were over 7,000 copies. I think the number was 7339.
Wow.
Right. Submissions, not copies, submissions. And I am still blown away to think that I was picked in the short list, and I wanted to celebrate that. And I chose the eve, it so happened that the eve of the announcement, the announcement was yesterday, and Tuesday would be the eve, and it was also my father's birthday. And
Tell them who your father is.
Washington Archibald, George Washington. He never went by George Washington, but G.W. He always wrote G.W. Archibald. And he was my first teacher, I think he engendered the love of words, of language. He recited poetry to us, and he encouraged us to write, and he read what we wrote, listened to it. So it was fitting for me to do it on that day. And also the fact that I didn't want to wait until after the announcement, because, it could have gone anyway, right?
Yes.
And I didn't think, I thought if I didn't get the big award, that maybe I wouldn't be as passionate to do this thing. And
Upbeat,
but you know that it settled me. It made me feel happy because it was such a successful turnout. It was a big turnout, and they were engaged, and I read well. I didn't stumble too much, and it was a happy moment.
Lovely.
You know, we only had water. It wasn't a party in the true sense of the word, but we were happy, and that helped me deal with the announcement.
Yes, so it was a great experience, and that is commendable. So now let's have a look at a little clip of that reading.
I think that, I don't know if that's something we've lost, you know, that people actually took people's children. And it didn't have to be their grandchild or blood child, you know, somebody. And that is part of the thing of immigration, of people leaving, right? Or emigration, that would be emigration. Because some people just left their children with neighbors or friends, you know, or big sisters, you know, usually sisters, not, you know, brothers so much. And people embrace people's children. We had, my mother looked after, and there were those who had already 6 and 7 children who took another child, right? Yeah. Sometimes sometimes not even because the parent went away. Some parents were, you know, some people are not, you know,
mothering.
Yeah, the other things are going on in their lives, right? Not to judge them, but they can't cope, and so the neighbor would take a child because the child comes over to play with the children from over there. Next thing you know, the child growing up there. No, I could call some names of people who.
Now, Ms. Archibald, you mentioned previously that your father definitely inspired your writing. He encouraged your reading. Tell us, who else influenced your craft? Yes,
you know, I talk about my father a lot, maybe because I see his face on mine every time. But my mother was in the church, and she pulled us to the church. My father was in the church at one point too, but I grew up knowing my mother in the church, and we sang beautiful hymns. I get disappointed, I have to say, when I don't hear those hymns that we sang in church anymore, or very, very rarely. But I love the hymns, and that's where I learned words like succor, and, you know, I can't remember some others, but there's some words that I say that I knew that I found them in that Sankey that we used to sing from, and we did a lot of singing around the house, and so that was part of the, I guess, the developing the love for poetry and words and rhythm and rhyme and those elements of poetry.
Lovely. Now we have here your book, Home, Home. Have you produced other publications, and where can we get them? Well,
I'm kind of old-fashioned in terms of so I've done 2 books. I did one during Carifesta. I was living here at the time, teaching at the college, and I did one that I called Pregnant These Past 20 Years, because I had all this work that I had been writing over all the years of my life by that time, and hadn't really published. Some of them I had lost, so I felt like there's some children out there that I've lost along the way. So I published that one here, and I sold it here and gave it away and such things. This one, I did it myself. We did the work, my friend Delois Wilkes and I, and we did everything. Well, I got paid to get the picture and the cover done, but we, you know, did the inner works of the, you know, it's amazing what goes into a book. And then I sent it to a printer. So I printed, whenever I need more books, I just get them to print another 100 or so, right? So they're not with Amazon, and I'm not going to say why here.
Are you going to publish The Marriage Proposal? And you were writing feverishly even during the intro. When can we look forward to something else?
You know, this commendation from the Commonwealth Foundation has inspired me greatly.
There you go.
I have a number of stories because I went back and did an MFA, and the thesis was a collection of short stories because I like short stories. I don't have the attention span, I think, for a novel. I can't stick with a big work like that. But these stories, I have so many of these stories that I want to explore. These characters that I want to present. So they work well in short stories, right? So I have those, and yeah, I have to revise, and revising is hard. Revising is harder than creating the story, right? I'd rather write a new story every day than, well, it would be so every week, than go back to old stories and try to revise them because they seem so bad when I do that. And the reason I sent in the marriage proposal was because it was the story that I had recently revised for another competition. So I had that there. It was ready to go.
All right, so before we take a break, can you please do a little reading for us?
Okay, so in thinking about reading, I thought that I would read something this book was published in 2016. So I feel like those poems are kind of old, and I've read most of them. But I wanted to try out this poem. It's called, well, I don't know what it's, the title for now is The Circus Clock in Bastille, St. Kitts. My sister called me one day and asked me if I'd ever written a poem on the circus clock, and I said, no, because if I wrote one, people wouldn't like it. So she challenged me to write it anyway. Time?
1 minute, yes. We are going to have you read it as soon as we come back after this short ad break.
Okay.
Healthwise on ZIZ TV, Mondays at 8:30 p.m. Hosted by Dr. Malik Lescott, Dr. Jolette Woodley, and Dr. Patrice Lawrence.
Yeah, man. Another day in the books. Well, hello there. She pretty from head to toe, and are you ready to go? Wait there. Whew. Can't afford to slip up. Not even in my dreams.
Welcome back, the CookUp connoisseurs or the CookUp foodies. Miss Archibald, can you please read that poem first? It's our exclusive right here on the CookUp.
The Circus Clock in Bastille, St. Kitts. It could be that when the venerable Mr. Berkeley, owner of Fountain Estate, gifted the circus clock to St. Kitts Island, whose soil had enriched him long before his birth, he did a noble thing. What a masterful way to give back so generously, to gift this gift that would lift the face of a small island colony. And this newly acquired town with its French name, Basseterre. Maybe it was his love of his native land to create a smaller London with a copycat clock in the heart of the capital. Something to show visitors entering the causeway from the sea that this mother island colony meant business. Surely the launching pad of British foreign might deserved so rich a monument. And how grand to carve this noble monument to grace the memory of his forebears and the pride of his image, complete with the family coat of arms. A monument designed to inspire awe and mastery from all who pass by. Or perhaps the act was simply one of gracious humility, unconscious altruism, if such there be, a monument to beautify, to keep and defend by those who would inherit it. But who would inherit it? Did Mr. Berkeley peek through the rings of time to discern the faces of his beneficiaries? I wonder if he ever glimpsed in the weary eyes of laborers at Fountain or any of the other estates his family owned, that therein lay the seeds of a nation who will cherish this gift long before they knew its veiled significance, and even after learning will look beyond its complicated past to separate the giver from the gift and cherish it, own it, because they earned it.
Okay, thank you. That's a lovely excerpt. And you know, I never thought of the person who made the clock. I just see something, oh, they imitated what's in Britain. I never thought of who could have decided to do this. Yeah, that gives us another side of it. And CookUp connoisseurs or CookUp foodies, you can find us on Facebook at SKNICH, on YouTube at St. Kitts Culture, and on Twitter at St. Kitts Culture. So tell us what you think about the CookUp. Now, final question. Would you say there's a connection between our oral tradition, things like storytelling, the spoken word, and writing?
Well, you know, I think the oral tradition always comes first, right? People tell stories. On the moonlight nights, you know, we would tell stories. Mama Jean would come and tell us mostly jumbie stories, scare the dickens out of us. But there were stories. And so that comes first. We take it a step further when somebody says, you know what, I want other people to read the stories, people who are not here under the moonlight, you know, to learn people who don't even know what under the moonlight is. You know, in some cultures you hardly see the moon, right? There's so much light, you don't see the moon, you don't get the feel of that nice lit, shadowy, you know. So you write the stories so somebody else could enjoy that, even if they're not there. So yes, there is, I mean, you can't have one without the, I guess you could have the oral without the written, but the written extends, you know, the reach.
It preserves it, it safeguards it.
Yes.
Okay, lovely. Now, does this fit into our heritage? I said the last one, but okay, so well, actually, let's look at a few notices that we have. You know, this conversation is getting juicier and juicier and sweeter, just like the CookUp. I actually think we need to have you come back, you know. So let me give a few notices, and then we'll see what happens. Okay, so now on June 6th, we are going to have Living Heritage. So today was our inaugural CookUp. And then next week, Thursday, same time, same place. So in other words, same social media, you are going to find Living Heritage. Then on Tuesday, June 11th, we have We Village That at Deep Bay. And registration is open for Sankofa shots, believe me. On our next CookUp, I am going to explain exactly what Sankofa means. But guess what? If you go to any of those social media platforms that I mentioned, you will find exactly what I am talking about. Now, CookUp connoisseurs, the music that you heard at our opening, it's a composition, a steel pan composition by Elston Nero, who we know as Elimat. And guess what? He did steel pan arrangements before he did the band music. And that is something that many of us do not know.
Oh, really?
So, Heather, Archibald, it was delicious having you on the CookUp this morning. And as I said, we're going to have a little discussion afterwards, you know, because I think we just had the tip of the iceberg. You have so much more that you can share with us, and I think we're going to do just that. So, it was our pleasure. CookUp connoisseurs, thank you. And before we go, We have one clip that we can show you of Sankofa shorts is an example. Sankofa shorts, this one is called Old Fire Stick, Easy to Catch.
Ever struggled to start a fire? Well, forget fancy gadgets. Sometimes the old ways are the best. This old fire stick, easy to catch. Just a flick of the wrist and boom, warmth. I wonder if that what Granny mean.
Child, that ain't what I mean. It mean when two people who are once together get back together. It's easy for them. That what I mean by old fire stick easy to catch.
CookUp connoisseurs, join the CookUp conversation. You know where to find us. Facebook, YouTube, Twitter.
Bob slithering on the bay with a big kawali fish that will poison the neighborhood cats she shares it with. Miss Coolie Girl storing neighbors' fish in their icebox for 2 pence and selling us ice to cool our lemonade. In the mirror, these women come, sporting headdresses. They linger, laughing and crowding up my mirror. I tie my scarf around them, tucking them all in under the fold.